Doing great, Mark. Thanks for having me over again.
Absolutely. It's just a bit one of those days, folks, so bear with us. I have not seen any of this stuff. I have done absolutely no college football work today, but I've certainly been working today. So been a lot of carrying of boxes and bins today and picking up U-Hauls that had flat tires and doing all sorts of stuff like that. So that's been my day since about 8 a.m. So we're going to delve into all the reports that are coming out today, and we will do all that together, folks. We will do that together. It's the Big Ten Live Show, number 52. I believe Justin Adams of our Nebraska show and also Sonny Verma of the Illini cast will be stopping by at some point. We do appreciate everyone being here. The phone lines will be open and are open, correct?
They are open and yep, ready to go.
But I'm guessing somebody out there is saying, what are the phone lines? What is the number?
Let's there
see
we go.
We can find it here.
It's scrolling right now.
There we go. I don't even know what the number is. 888-997-4539. 888-997-4539. It may be a familiar line to you, USC fans, which, by the way, following us on our Big Ten Live show each and every Friday night, you got to just make the trek over to the USC channel with Tim and with Matt for the live USC call-in show at 9 Eastern, 6 Pacific. All right, Tim, let's get through this together here. Oh, of course, my glasses are not handy. Everything's disheveled today. This is coming from CBS Sports and Dennis Dodd. And college football playoff negotiations moved to more at-large teams amid outcry over Big Ten SEC automatic buys. Okay, this is concerning the 14-team playoff, which would begin in 26, trending to featuring one at-large team amid backlash to bidding from the Big Ten and the SEC that would have afforded the conferences a sizable portion of the field and auto first-round buys each year. Okay, so when discussions began 2 weeks ago, sources told CBS Sports that the Big Ten and SEC would seek to receive as many as 4 auto qualifiers each, which I don't know why that's controversial. They're going to get them anyway in an expanded playoff. Coming out of the first college football playoff management committee meeting, it seemed as if the 3-3-2-2-1 model, which is 3 SEC, 3 Big Ten, 2 ACC, 2 Big 12, 1 G5, and don't get hung up on those numbers. Those are baseline floor numbers. Those are guaranteed auto. That doesn't mean that they can't be higher than that. So that was gaining traction. So that would be exactly what I just outlined there. So then the other portion of this, and folks, be here at the voice of college football. I said all these things like 6 weeks ago about why the Big Ten in particular and the SEC would win a 14-team playoff. And here it is. We've said this over and over and over and over. Don't get too focused on spots number 13 and 14. Although I will predict if there's a 14-team playoff, Tim, that 80% of those final 2 spots will go to the SEC and the Big Ten. But everybody focus on the front portion of the seedings, the 1 and 2 spots. The Big Ten and the SEC do not want to give the Big 12 and the ACC, whomever they may be, as champions. Utah, Arizona, Oklahoma State, the Louisvilles of the world don't want to give them first-round buys. Don't think, why should they be given first-round buys when they're going to be the 12th and 14th ranked teams in the country? We want a 14-team playoff so we can eliminate buys and we can get down to 2 buys. We'll eliminate the other 2, and almost assuredly, those are going to go to the SEC and the Big Ten. That's what this is all about primarily. Okay, so next up, somebody's making a statement here. This is anonymous. Somebody's saying in the inner sanctum here to CBS Sports, what they're basically saying is we don't trust the selection committee. Therefore, we basically want to take away their power. And I really don't get that in a sense, although everybody likes to have control. But the selection committee is going to be selecting SEC and Big Ten teams anyway. So Tim and I discussed real quick, or just really touched base, didn't discuss, but the revenue distribution. So let's get to what that could look like. So the debut of this is 34 months away. If this proposal, this model, is the one that makes it. So one such proposal being circulated would include 58% of combined CFP revenue going to the Big Ten and the SEC, with the ACC and the Big 12 splitting approximately $31 million. I hate poorly written articles. Why are you giving us a percentage for two conferences and a flat out dollar figure for the other? Anyway, the remaining 10% would be divided between Notre Dame and the group of 5 conferences, according to Yahoo Sports. So I guess it's 58, 32, 10 in terms of percentages. So 58% Big Ten SEC, 32% ACC Big 12, 10% to Notre Dame in the group of 5 conferences. And I'm wondering if Notre Dame doesn't make it, I guess they completely miss out. The Power 5
29% is going to go to 18 teams. I mean, people don't realize that the number is going to be massive, though. What the revenue from this thing is going to be huge, but I wonder what the raw numbers are going to look like. But definitely, if you're Notre Dame, this is one more reason why you're going to be missing out. But if you move to the model and there's not a big penalty, because there's not going to be these was it the play-in with when they're playing each other and being able to host a game, I think that's going to be the thing that's going to be the issue for Notre Dame more than actual money. But only getting a fraction of 10%, whatever it is, I don't know the G5 schools, how many there's going to be, and then getting 10% of that split is going to be very little revenue for Notre Dame. Although they just got their big $60 million, right? Their new TV deal. So I mean, they're doing fine as far as TV money is concerned.
Yeah, there's a lot to ask concerning all of this. The group of 5 split. If I'm the American Conference, why would I want to split with a MAC? The MAC is never going to the playoff. And what is the split between Notre Dame and the group of 5? Is that an even split of 10%? Notre Dame gets 5%. Group of 5 conferences, all those conferences, which is 5 conferences, all those teams, they get 5%? I don't know. So currently, Tim, the Power 5 conference is split $400 million equally, which is about $80 million each for the 5 conferences under the old system, what's considered the current system. And so that's only for a 4-team playoff and a 3-game playoff. This is an 11-game playoff. So you've increased almost by 4-fold the number of games. So I don't know that they're going to generate 4 times the money, because the lesser games won't, the first round games, but still probably 3 times as much money, maybe $1.2 billion that they'll generate. Right now, the group of 5 gets 22% of the CFP revenue. So they're
I think they took a look at that right away and said that's not going to happen anymore. Yeah.
They've had 1 team in 10 years. Out of 40 spots, they've had 1 team get in and they get 22%. I wonder if that's just when they make it. Huh. And it says the group of 5 decides how that slice is split between the 5 conferences based on their on-field accomplishments. Okay, that must be an interesting formula. Okay.
Now that college football is turning to basically a revenue-driven sport, not education, not coaching, not rivalries or regionality or conferences. Really, it's coming down to money. And now you're seeing the TV contracts, the difference between, let's say, a Big Ten or an SEC contract and an ACC TV contract. And now they're going to get less money for the playoff money. And then that's going to trickle down to merchandise, etc. At what point are these other conferences going to be just completely, well, at a disadvantage level enough to where they're not going to be able to field teams that will be competitive? Is that a concern with you, Mark?
Oh boy, I have so many concerns in all of this. Well, so right now we have a system in which there were 5 conferences. So now 4 that basically allowed the selection committee to interpret the strength of the leagues, the strength of the teams, and make its decisions. And then there was an even split of sorts, unless you participated more in the playoff SEC, because it was, whether we can argue, earned or a preferential treatment given. They want it baked into the system. So this is, what if this would be different if, let's say, the Big Ten and the SEC, after gaining Oklahoma, Texas, after pulling in the 4 teams from the Pac-12 for 5 years now, going forward, dominated the playoff, dominated the sport, dominated the playoff, went back to the bargaining table and said, hey, look how this is playing out. Our conferences rule, our teams rule. We need a bigger slice of this. We've proven ourselves, and this is the way it needs to be. The Big Ten and the SEC are out in front of this from that standpoint, and basically assuming and wanting the playoff management committee to assume we are going to dominate this. And I'm not saying that they have no legs to stand on, because they certainly do. From a branding standpoint, from a brand value standpoint, regardless of who wins on the field, those 2 conferences have the brand names that are going to bring the eyeballs to the playoffs. So they can argue that, but the on the field performance has yet to be seen. Now, we all anticipate that those 2 conferences will dominate the playoff, and they should be given more money, not 58 to 32%. If you just went strictly by the number of teams, 34 in the SEC and the Big Ten, and 16 and 30. So it's only 34-30 between the 2 sets of conferences. So, yeah. So that is basically where we stand on that. It's a power play by the SEC and the Big Ten, and their brands justify it. Their on the field doesn't justify it yet, because we haven't seen it yet. And that bothers me. Folks, if you'd like to give Tim and myself a call, it's 888-997-4539. Appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. Everyone in the chat, Super Chat's available if you got comments or questions you would like for us to respond to as well.
You know, they're talking on the Cover 3 podcast. They were talking. So you know how it's proposed that the Big Ten and SEC are going to get 3 auto bids each. And how are you going to decide those 3 auto bids? Is it going to be a conference champion and then two highest ranked? Or is it going to be is some way having to do with, they talked about having so they have a championship game, right? And then they would have a second championship game between the 3 and the 4 to decide that 3rd spot.
Well,
how else do you think it could be done?
Well, unless I'm missing something here, the College Football Playoff Committee is still going to be in charge of selecting the teams. They're just giving them very strict guidelines that is going to force them. So let's say the top 3 ranked teams in the Big Ten are Ohio State, Michigan, and USC. And they are ranked 3, 10, and 22. So number 22 wouldn't normally make it. But since the Big Ten has 3 auto qualifiers, just like with the group of 5, the group of 5 is going to get its team in, even though most seasons, there's not a group of 5 team in the top 12 in the country. They will get Liberty last year was number 22 in the country. They would have been in the playoff. That's how I believe it's going to play out. Otherwise, I don't know why this committee still exists. Or maybe it won't.
Again, we want to get away from polls and committees and this kind. We want to get closer to what we call a real playoff, right? The best way to do that was, so there would be a reason. And so you have the championship games like, oh, what's the point? They're all going to get in. Well, no, it has to do with the seeding. So if you win the Big Ten championship game, you can be the number 1 seed in the Big Ten, right? And where that seeding would go. But then number 2 would follow in suit as well, right behind them. And then you'd have 3 and 4 playing for that play-in for that 3rd position. Instead of allowing a committee to tell us who the 3rd and 4th best teams are, they would actually play each other. It's kind of going backwards into the BCS game, right? Where they would decide the 2 best teams. Now within a conference, you have the ability to say, let's take the 4 best teams in the conference and have them play each other.
There's only one simple reason why I disagree with you and disagree with that system, because if we were playing video games, I would completely agree with you. Or if these guys were indestructible, I would completely agree with you. I want as much to be determined by on the field results, but I don't know that we can add another game.
But you're not adding it, because if they had won, they would be playing in the championship game, right? So you have that championship game.
Sure.
This is just another championship game. It's not like they're playing 2 more consecutive games. They play the regular season and 1 more. Just like the 1 and 2 in the conference will play 1 more.
Sure.
Not a 2nd or a 3rd game. It's just you have that extra game. I hear what you're saying as well, but then why do we play championship games?
So it's championship game weekend. Pick your conference. We'll stick with the Big Ten, of course. It's a Big Ten live show, folks, number 52. So it's championship weekend. And on Saturday night, we have the Big Ten championship game. It's Ohio State and USC. It's the exact championship game you and I want. It's Ohio State and USC on Saturday night, the 2 best teams in the country playing in the Big Ten championship game. Penn State and Michigan are 3 and 4 in the Big Ten. They'll play on Friday night.
Friday night. Hey, that's TV. Look, you just said it. How much money is that going to roll in? Friday night, you have the 3 and 4 play against each other, and then Saturday night you have 1 and 2 playing.
And they're going to play a game, and we're going to expect these players to get up for this game and to be excited after they win to finish number 3 in the Big Ten.
So you can get into the playoffs.
Okay. Next scenario.
Sorry. Seeding in the playoffs. Yes. I know 3 and 4 probably are in anyway. 3's definitely in, but it's because what if 3 and 4 didn't play each other? Because you have 18 teams. Sure. We're going to select who it is, and then they get a better seeding because
that's what we do now.
The committee said that they're better.
That's what we do now.
And that's what we've been always trying. If not, why not go all the way back to the polls, and we'll just say who's the best teams.
Okay. What if this scenario plays out? Because, of course, you're looking at the guy who's run all these scenarios over the last 10 years plus. What if, same thing, Ohio State, USC, they're playing in the championship game. Michigan, Penn State are playing on Friday night at 3 and 4. Let's say Oregon's the 5th seed. So it's not looking too good for them. Maybe they'll get selected for playoffs. Who knows? They're number 14 in the country. They're 9 and 3. Their regular season is over. Okay. First of all, let's understand there had to be a differentiation made between 4th place and 5th place, and they may not have played and might have the same record in the Big Ten, correct?
Correct.
So we got to decide that. The Big Ten conference should decide that, not the playoff committee or the rankings.
Well, that's kind of what their argument was. So you have three. This part I didn't agree with, but they were basically saying leave it up to the conferences. So you have 3 auto bids, let them choose how they want to put their 3 auto bids in. I know that's unlikely because this whole thing is set up for and by the network, whoever's recovering, in my opinion. That's where it really is the big differences could be. That's why I think there is probably room for that second game because, and I agree with you, but then as soon as we went from 10 teams to this larger, 12 team, 14 team, etc., now 18 teams, we knew everybody was going to play everybody. And even with the 4-team playoff, that was better than the BCSY, because then you have 3 and 4. So now if you miss, if you're 5th place, then you can cry. But why was it even questioned? Really should be just looking at the 1 and 2. If you're complaining you were left out of a 4 team because you're the 5th place team, you're that much farther removed from the situation. So if we're talking about from your conference, if there's a question, if you're the bubble between 5 and 4, that's the second part about college football. It's always been great because there needs to be that bitching. Just look at how much the sport gained as far as infamy or notoriety, however you want to say it, with the FSU decision. College football loves that kind of a thing. But if you go from 2 teams to 4 teams, the odds of a 3rd or 4th team that probably should have had a legitimate shot being left out of that kind of a scenario, the 4th team being left out of that scenario, instead of having a 3rd person chosen for them ahead to be the auto bid, I think it removes that ability for a committee, or let's say it, Fox and ESPN, to decide who they want in that 3rd spot.
So correct me if I'm wrong. It sounds like on one hand, and this is very consistent with our other previous discussions on this topic, that you are very pro objectivity, winning matters on the field, and then let's figure out how that can be objectively evaluated to determine, rather than having people just decide it, have a system that decides it. But then on what you just stated seemed to be like, well, but if there's a situation where 4 and 5, it's difficult to figure out, and 5 gets left out, then it's great for the sport just to argue and discuss.
But that's my point. No, it is great for the sport. I don't say I like it, but I'm not going to deny that it's good for college football, right? To have those controversies. Controversies are great for any kind of news.
Sure.
And it's that kind of stuff that generates interest, for what we do, for what newspapers, or even the networks themselves. Generating that conversation, being in the conversation because there is a controversy, that is absolutely be beneficial to college football. But my point is once they went from 10 teams to the larger conferences, why? Because they won a conference championship game. Why? So you get more money. I mean, this has all been money. What's to stop them saying, hey, look, we got 3 teams. Why don't we have 4 and 5 playing? And I'll bet you that is probably a way they might go.
Okay, so yeah, I have devised formats in college football years ago when this first started to get out of control, to the point to say this conference is going to be so large, pick the conference, is going to be so large, you're going to need a playoff within the conference, a very mini playoff, like a 14 playoff, to determine it. Otherwise, you have to go to point differentials and a lot of crazy things that shouldn't matter to determine. But to get back to was my original point. This is what I was leading to. If you take the 10 years of 14 playoff and you take all those results and look at each individual year, and you suddenly jettison that to a 12 or 14 team playoff and say, okay, it's 2014, 12 or 14 team playoff. Do you know how many times, Tim, a conference championship game loser was going into the conference championship weekend in that top 12, and the loss knocked them out of the top 12? Now, because there was only a 14 playoff, the committee, their rankings didn't matter at that point, because being number 11 versus being number 15 didn't matter. But in this scenario, that would happen. They are going to be looking at teams and determining, are we going to penalize them for losing a conference championship game? Well, it's another data point, but in some instances, the conference championship game is going to hurt teams that are on the bubble. And the reason I brought that up is to apply it to your scenario. Would Penn State losing the 3-4 matchup in embarrassing fashion, they lose 42-10, does that knock them behind Oregon, who was the 5 seed, who had a legitimate gripe to be in this 3-4 matchup? All that has to be considered as well. Folks, we do appreciate you being here, the voice of college football. So the Amazon links in the description section of all the videos, including this one. And it's easy to use. It is the same exact shopping experience. So please grab the Amazon link. It's in the description section. Amazon's in caps. Grab the link, put it somewhere where you will remember it. And that's one way. That is the way right now. Hopefully there will be others in the future. That is one way in which you can contribute to the voice of college football financially without spending a penny. And we are going to have the state of the voice of college football here in a few weeks. We'll announce a date, and that live stream could be 45 minutes or 5 hours or 12 hours. I don't know. I am going to sit here and talk about the state of the voice of college football for as long as I need to get everything explained and communicated, and to take your questions and comments. And for you college football fans that only care about college football, that is the one day out of 365 that you shouldn't check in. But if you care about the voice of college football, then we will want you to be here.
Yeah, Matt. Well, we got Hoagie calling in. He wants to talk. He wants to weigh in on the playoff situation.
Awesome.
Michael Hogue. Michael, you there? Go ahead.
Hey, how you doing?
Michael,
you hear me?
We got you.
Hey, Mark, can you hear me?
We can.
All right, how you doing tonight, sir?
I am doing just well. Good to hear from you.
Yeah, I've just been busy with basketball, not getting ready for football. I mean, not football. Hey, the only thing I'm trying to figure out is, I seen something the other day, guarantee stuff the Big Ten and the SEC said, and so I thought I read something the other day to where they're having a change of heart about it and might not guarantee it or something.
Okay. So you're asking me?
No, I was just saying it.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Hello.
Yeah, we're listening.
I'm gonna try to call back in my. No, I'm having a hard time. Keep coming in and out. I'm gonna try to call back.
Okay.
Right.
Call
All
back,
right.
Michael. Thank you.
That was okay.
Michael's a big Purdue fan. We need more Purdue fans. I am rooting for the bottom of the Big Ten here to be contributing to this show. Tim and I had this idea to do a call-in show focusing on the Big Ten. And so we had the Big Ten live show on Mondays, but we know for some of you, it's much easier to join us with the call-in line that you see on the ticker down below. So we moved to Fridays because it worked out best. And so please give us a call. And tons of changes, improvements, upgrades we're on the verge of. We are on the cusp of here at the Voice of College Football. So hang in there with us. There's much going on here, and we're excited about moving forward. And you have joined the Big Ten Live show, folks. And we got G Bama Boy here. We got Steven. We got Troy. We got Hummus Hero and others. I was considering, we'll try it out, see if there's a response. We brought up the topic of Mount Rushmores for each individual school. People called in with their various teams, and we just touched on that last time because we had a busy show last night. There was a lot of news going on. Nick Saban came out, his interview with ESPN, trashing college football to a certain extent. And by and large, even though I know many of you and a couple of callers included believe that Nick Saban's just whining and complaining and just is the guy that is angrily leaving the sport, I think he's got some great points. I don't know that those points can be fixed is the problem. So we talked about that, and I will have a video coming out at some point concerning NIL and transfer portal and how this can be more effectively managed for the student athletes themselves to protect their rights, because when it comes right down to it, we can get upset about NIL and we can get upset about pay for play and potential salaries for these players. However, that's what it is. That's what it is. And we live in America and they should be afforded the same rights as everyone else. So it's not good for the sport. And I would love to be wrong and for it to turn out to be good for the sport, but most likely just not good for the sport. But the individual rights rule out. And that's where we stand. So where was I headed? Mount Rushmore's. Yes. So we thought, yeah, I think doing a Mount Rushmore series of live streams would be fun on the individual channels. Do a USC. Maybe I can drag in Tim to do that. I'm sure Matt Zemek will have some things to say about that. We could do a USC Mount Rushmore live stream. That would be fun. And a whole other, and we'll see how those go. See if you guys like them, and we'll continue with those. Absolutely.
Mark, you got John Diadamo calling in from the Ocho and the Michigan call-in show.
Nice. John, how you doing?
Hey, everybody.
What's up, John?
I'm good. I'm good. Friday night. Calling in here. I figured we didn't have a lot of callers, so I wanted to make sure we got the call-in line rolling, and I can confirm it is working, and I can hear everybody. So there you go.
Yeah, well, it's been spotty, so I wouldn't blame people. It's been a bit weird lately. Last week we got monster calls, so I'm glad we're back to normal filtering.
Absolutely. So my only point really, so Mark, you just mentioned about Nick Saban and his point of like he thought he was going to have a monster team basically in 2025, right? Between, I know this is a Big Ten show, but you brought it up, so I'm gonna, because I thought it was really interesting that he made the point. Because he had Bond, he had Caleb Downs, he had all this talent. I actually think if it weren't for the NIL situation the way that it is, I'd put like 50-50 odds that Saban would have won a title in 25. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I'm not putting Nick Saban or anyone, for as great as he is, with 50-50 odds against the rest of the country. But I get your point. It's certainly a valid point in regards to how good his team would be this season in 2024. Yes, they lost a ton of talent and they're still loaded. They should not be in any way bypassed in anyone's thinking concerning contention for the SEC championship, even now.
Yeah. I could, Mark, you're cutting it definitely in and out a little bit. I think I'm hearing Tim clearly. But, I don't know. But yeah, no, no, 50-50 might be a little high, but he is the GOAT, and I wouldn't have put it past him. So I guess we'll see. But it does just kind of show you about the parity, situation, that even though there's still going to be inequity in college football, you're going from, Nick Saban, of course, is the owner of Mercedes-Benz dealerships and other things. He can slide some perks to his players. Well, now everybody can. And with the recent ruling that just happened, NCAA can't enforce anything with respect to NIL. So they paused the investigation into Tennessee, and I guess it's kind of wild west at this point, because there's really nothing stopping schools from just throwing the bag, right? Like what mechanism is there to stop if the NCAA is kind of, their hands are tied?
And now with the news that we received today that the Big Ten and the SEC are looking for larger splits of the college football playoff share, well, if I'm one of the power brands within those conferences and it's wide open for all schools to now be throwing money at everyone, and we might be headed toward a salary system in which everybody gets paid. The starting quarterback at Indiana, and I'm not saying this is happening, but it's a potential model that the starting quarterback at Indiana gets paid just as much money as the starting quarterback at Ohio State, even though Indiana brings virtually nothing to the table in the Big Ten in regards to drawing eyeballs. That, well, the same thing that the Big Ten and the SEC are fighting for right now, to say, we're the best brands, we're the biggest brands, we bring the eyeballs, pay us more money because we earn it.
Right.
Why wouldn't the best programs in those two conferences say, you know what? We bring the biggest brands and the most eyeballs, so you have to pay us the most money back in this TV contract. I don't know why that hasn't happened before. Florida State's the first one to bring it up, at least publicly, to say, ACC, this is one of the big reasons we're leaving. Number one, because you've mismanaged the TV contract. Number one. Number two, there's an even distribution, and we should at least get our share. So I would expect that to be coming down the road, but maybe sooner rather than later.
Yeah, Mark. Yeah, I don't know if you checked out our show, the Ocho, the other day, but we were talking about the CBS Sports article from Dennis Dodd, and there's a little nugget hidden in the article that normally some outlets would probably put in the headline as clickbait, and respect to Dennis that he didn't do this, but he is essentially saying that if that conversations have begun where the Big Ten and the SEC are considering exiting, like essentially parting ways with the NCAA. And It was an unnamed Power 5 athletic director was the source.
Yeah. Well, ever since that advisory board was structured and announced, there's been all sorts of people, including myself, saying, I'm not predicting it, but I'm saying that's a huge possibility. Okay, John, anything else? We appreciate you calling.
Nope, that's it. Just a reminder, everybody hit the like button. If you're doing your shopping on Amazon, make sure to hit that Amazon link. Okay, it's in every single video that we have on our Voice of College Football Network. So make sure to support the channel in whatever way you can, even through that.
Thanks, John. We appreciate you being here. Catch John every Monday night right here on the national channel with the Big Ten Ocho. That's at 8 o'clock Eastern time. And then over on the Michigan channel for Michigan Wolverines live every Tuesday at 8 Eastern.
That's right.
Thanks, John.
Thanks a lot, guys.
See you, John.
Later.
All right. We've got one of our show hosts stopping by here. Appreciate Justin Adams being here. You can catch Justin on Cheesy Corn Sports, the Big Ten show.
There we go. We're getting there. We got it.
You guys have been going with this for what, about 2 months, and I can never remember if it's the Big Ten show, the Big Ten channel, the Big Ten huddle. I'll get there. I'll figure it out.
The fact that you remembered it was 2 months, because you're almost exactly right, but cannot remember the show name.
I just took a shot at that, but
yeah,
we appreciate it. And of course, Justin hosts post game and also produces tons of content for us over on the Nebraska channel here at the Voice of College Football. Of course,
yes,
Justin, what's going on tonight?
Not a whole lot. Just, I could be in the minority here with all this playoff talk and all that stuff, but my thing on it is this stuff I feel like is changing so much and going to change so much before we ever get there. It's so hard to follow this stuff, and it's almost like, how closely should we follow this, and how much should we, how much thinking should we do into this? Because I feel like everything that we know is going to get flipped on its head eventually, And right now in this situation with the Big Ten and the SEC, right? And don't they have they have the power in this, right? So they're going to end up getting what they want at the end of the day. So what about this? And I'm going to ask your opinion because I wasn't able to catch the very beginning of the show. So forgive me if you've already said this, but like, what's your overall, just a quick take on kind of the latest in that?
So this is either for me a precursor to what eventually is going to happen. So this is the Big Ten and the SEC thinking eventually we're breaking off and doing our own thing.
Yep.
But before we do that, we might as well make the most money possible.
Correct.
And they might as well pay us for what we're delivering, which is the eyeballs.
Yep.
Or it's a play to say, this is what you're going to give us.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll continue to play college football kind of normally with 4 conferences, maybe 3 going forward. But we're just going to get paid based on our brands, and we'll keep the sport together going forward, or else we're going to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And to me, right? Like, I don't know how everybody wants this to play out, but I feel like this is just, it's the writing on the wall has been there for a while. And this is all just setting up for what we already thought was going to happen, which is the eventual separation of the two. I just feel like each thing that drops, like and they still, right. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but they still don't even have the agreement locked down with ESPN, because that was reported a while back, but there was never an official agreement. So they don't even have the TV rights in place yet. So I don't know. I just think there's so much that's going to happen in between now and then, because they don't even have that locked into place. And the entire reason that they expedited that original meeting for the 12-team playoff was because ESPN was putting pressure on to the CFP to figure that out, so they would then agree to it, right? So they were putting pressure on them to agree to everything that was going to happen on paper. And that's why they had that expedited meeting where we came out with the 5+7, going from the 6-6 to the 5-7. And there's still no agreement in place. So I think that's another question of mine too. Like, what are they waiting on here? Is this just like a means to an end? I don't understand why they still don't even have that in place yet. It is because this is just going to continue to change. And then at that point, when is it going to be finalized?
Well, I think there's so much distrust between everybody involved that instead of saying, we know that this is the structure of college football, 5 conferences, and I'm taking us back a few years, 5 conferences, we work together. This is what we do. Let's sign the next contract. We split it anyway.
Yeah.
We give the group of 5 a little bit, but we split it. And that's the way we do business, because that's the way we've always done business. Now it's more or less, well, we're not going to sign a new contract until we know what we are going to get, because it's no longer 50-50.
Yes. And the ESPN SEC thing, that adds a whole nother extra element to this, because you got ESPN then kind of on the fence here, between 2 sides that are kind of conflicting. So I don't know. I just like, I'm with this stuff, it's like I'm trying to keep track of all the changes, but not overthink it. Because I feel like every time I've overthought it and we come to a conclusion, and then we still have a million questions when we get some kind of resolution. And then as soon as like it happens, more questions come out, and then something changes again. Like I said, when we had the 5+7 come out, I'm like, I don't even know necessarily if I should talk about this, just because I feel like, we're still how many 10 months, whatever, away from the playoff even coming around, and it's changing this drastically. I don't know if I trust anybody to kind of make a decision and stick with it at this point. I don't know.
You know what I'm going to tell you, right, Justin?
What's that?
What I'm going to tell you is, if something is out there, whether it's
speculation. Yeah. No,
speculation, substantiated, reported, whatever you want to say.
Yeah.
And sure. You say, okay, well, this is the current news of the day.
Yeah.
And even if it changes in 3 days, you might as well say, this is what I think about this. Boom, there's your content.
Yeah, I was, and for me, right, it was like I felt like I was gonna sit there and do this, and then the next week it was gonna change. So I'm like, on my video, because I was breaking it down in detail and just trying to hit every point and kind of break it down, for the people who may not have been following along step by step. And then, in that video, I was just kind of like, I don't know if I should do this because I feel like it's gonna change 100 times before, because we're still 10 months out and it's already changed a couple times. That, yeah, but I
That's
get.
the beauty of it, Justin. Then
Yeah.
you do 100 videos.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm getting better. I'm getting better at that. So, but no, it's interesting to talk about. I just think it's one of those things that's like, I'm just ready for college football to get here, and I'm ready to just know what it's going to look like. And I think it's just the impatience in me of just wanting to know what it's going to look like when we get there and what we can anticipate and expect coming up. But, yeah, I don't know. It's changing so quickly; it's hard to keep up. But this new, I don't know. We all kind of had it from the get go that the SEC and the Big Ten were just, they had the power, and once they kind of joined forces, it was just, the NCAA and them, they're at the whim of each other. Money talks. And these guys, the conferences, the NCAA, they have all the money, but right now it's the NCAA is in a weird spot where they all of a sudden don't have any of the leverage. So I kind of like to see him squirm a little bit, but we'll let it see and play out. But
So, Justin, for Big Ten folks that are not Nebraska fans that are here, but want a little slice of Nebraska, what's going on with Nebraska? What do I need to know right now? Give us a little taste of what's going on with Matt Rule and the boys right now.
yeah, not a ton. Just over the last few weeks, been getting offers out to some of the 2025 class. But really, the biggest thing that I think people who don't know internally inside Nebraska, that see it from the outside, I think the biggest thing to tell people is the surface. The players we're getting and stuff like that. You got to peek a little bit deeper into the locker room and the culture and what they're building there. Under Scott Frost, there wasn't much of a culture. He kind of was just there. He collected a check, was kind of lazy, didn't show up to meetings and stuff like that. And now Matt Rule comes in and he's kind of got everything moving the right direction. There's camaraderie between all of the teams, all of the coaches, between the entire athletic department. And that is kind of showing in terms of, again, 77% of Nebraska players stayed from this past year's team. So players are sticking. They're not entering the transfer portal. And, that's how Matt Rule's going to build his foundation, and we're going to see where it goes from there. But he's starting that foundation, and then, give it a couple years and let's see where it takes him. But super excited just based on the fact that the entire athletic department, for once, I feel like in my life, is on the same page. The athletic director, the coaches, everywhere, they're supporting each other. And I just feel like this is the best situation that we've had in a long time. So.
Well, Trev Alberts is an impressive guy. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
I don't know what's going on, at the office and within campus in terms of the decision making. I can't vouch for that, but it appears as though he also knows what he's doing. But he's certainly an impressive guy in his interactions with the media and how he handles himself out in public. Always has been a strength.
Yeah, and the biggest thing I think Trev Alberts is giving these coaches is trust, right? Like he trusts Matt Rule to make his own decisions. And before, I think with Frost, it was a little bit of, again, he would not, the when he was recruiting Dylan Raiola, he changed it last second to a Zoom meeting because I don't know, got a drinking too late, something like that. I don't know. That was the speculation, but it was confirmed that was supposed to be an in-person meeting and it got flipped. So no wonder, Matt Rule had to come back in and do it. It's just little things like that. And you can see it on the field, even like the players, like I said on my film breakdown the other day, how you play without the ball determines how much you love your teammates. And just looking at the way Nebraska played last year, just in terms of physicality and everybody being on the same page and hats flying to the ball, especially on the defensive side, when the talent gets there on the offensive side, that's going to come as well. But this is the most of a unit I've seen of a Nebraska team in a long time. And in a world right now where you had Saban kind of talking about like, oh, players, they're not a unit. They're worried about themselves and all this other stuff. I don't necessarily think that's the case everywhere. Maybe that was the case in Alabama because that's how they built it. But, what I'm seeing is completely different. And I'm sure there's other schools out there that are completely different. So, and I'm liking to see, again, if you can come in and you can have a guy, Matt Rule's not the type that's going to pay you to just come here because, you're a talent. He's going to want the type of guy that he wants in the building and the leaders that he wants in the building. And, the fact that he's able to keep players and keep other teams from, plucking them away when these teams are willing to just throw money at players, I think it says a lot about him and a lot of what, the players are buying into what he's selling. And, again, third most returning talent in college football behind Iowa State and somebody else. And it's another thing too, like I talked to you about before, his success rate on these guys, like he's going after guys. He's not just, throwing out 4 or 5 star offers. He's actually landing the guys he's getting onto campus and stuff like that. So it's exciting right now, man. And like I said, I'm just ready for the season to get here. So people can kind of see, that it's not just Dylan Raiola, it's not just Carter Nelson. Like there is a lot of stuff going on. And I see Todd, did Nebraska get rid of Satterfield? No, Satterfield is still there. Essentially what happened last season is Marcus Satterfield was supposed to be the offensive coordinator and the tight ends coach. Well, Nebraska went in on Jake Peets to be the QB coach, but that fell through at the last second. So then Marcus Satterfield had to not only coach the offense and tight ends, but he also had to be the quarterback coach. So that's tough. And so what they did this offseason, they went and got Glenn Thomas, who was the Pittsburgh Steelers offensive analyst. He worked with Matt Rule and Baylor and Temple. He worked with the Atlanta Falcons. He was the person who got Matt Ryan to 2 of his 3 Pro Bowls. And now he's the quarterback coach at Nebraska. So, and co-OC, but Satterfield's going to be calling the plays. But now, we got a quarterback coach and all of these guys, Satterfield, Glenn Thomas, Matt Rule, they have all worked together at Temple and Baylor. So they all have connections. They all know how each other works. So it's not going to be one of those things we have a new coach on the staff. Let's see how we can integrate it. It's like, let's get back to business and what we know works for us. And that seems to be what they're doing, is just getting the gang back together. They were able to retain Tony White again, the defensive coordinator. He had the potential to go to UCLA and a couple other jobs, but he decided to stay, and then Nebraska threw some more money at him. And like I said last week, it wasn't that Nebraska threw more money and then he decided to stay. He decided to stay, and then Nebraska, restructured his contract that way. So again, just another thing right there, when you have a coach who's willing to stay and be a defensive coordinator and kind of build, a little bit more and maybe work towards a better head coaching job, then I think that says something about how much they trust Rule and how much they like the internal workings of where Nebraska's at. And, it's been echoed by former players alike, who weren't happy with where things were. And, things are changing. The conversation's changing for sure. And people are still calling Nebraska irrelevant while still talking about Nebraska. So that's also fun and interesting. I'm like, if we're irrelevant, why are you talking about us? Can't be that irrelevant. But yeah, it's and especially in, like I said, this new Big Ten, the arms race that is going to be this new Big Ten. Like, it's the perfect time, hopefully, to take that second year Matt Rule step, because this team is much better than the ones he's had in the past, for sure.
Join Justin on Cheesy Corn Sports. It's right here on YouTube. Join him on the Big Ten Show.
Yep.
It's right here on YouTube with our guys JR and with Sonny Verma. And then also, Justin and I get together, of course, for the Huskers live show. It's every Tuesday at 7 Eastern, 6 Central, where it counts, right there in the heartland.
Yep.
And what else is going on at the Voice of College Football GBR?
Yeah, so I'm actually, after I get off here, I'm going to drop a video about the NIL stuff. The new.
I love that.
There's the NIL, where you can pay for a player to come to your school. It's very interesting stuff. So I'm going to be putting a video, and I feel like anybody can go check that one out, because, it's about NIL as a whole, and it's something everybody can get involved in, but it's a way that fans can go and pay for a player that they specifically want their money to go to, as opposed to putting it in a pot and it just going out. So I'll be posting that after.
Awesome. every time Justin texts me and tells me that he's posting a video on the Nebraska channel, he doesn't know this because we're texting back and forth. He can't see me, but I give it a fist pump. He doesn't know that, but I'm pumping my fist because Justin does a great job over there. Appreciate it. People love his content. So we've got a ton of Nebraska fans over there on the Husker channel that have said, man, love what you're doing, Justin. Love the content. Keep it coming. And so we got it rolling over there. So join us, even if you don't like Nebraska, even if you're not a Huskers fan, you love college football. Yeah, we're talking Huskers, of course, but we're talking all of college football across the board and certainly the Big Ten.
Absolutely. And make sure y'all drop a like here on this one and bring your friends, all your friends. All right, drop them in here. And Sonny will be calling in too as well.
Nice.
Just a heads up.
All right. Get to hear from Sonny tonight.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yep.
Justin, you have a great night. We'll be looking for that video.
Likewise. Have a good one, Mark.
It's our guy, Justin Adams, over on the Nebraska channel. Kind of similar to Tim on the USC channel, just taking over, doing a great job. Tim, Matt, over on the USC channel. Of course, Tim leading the charge. Matt is our number one analyst. I guess we can give him that title, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yes, he is our number one analyst there at the USC channel. Tim is our number one host. I don't know where I fit into all that, but I just show up on Monday nights. And whenever I've got something to say about USC, maybe I pop a video on there once in a while.
I think we all just show up, actually.
Well, I know I just show up for that, but you guys bring the knowledge. I just show up. So when you show up and bring the knowledge, then people don't know you're just showing up. So I just show up and hang out with those guys every Monday at new times, 10 Eastern, 7 Pacific on Monday nights, folks. Trojan Conquest Live. And Tim is getting ready to jump on over to the call-in show with Matt. And that's at 6 Pacific, everyone. That's coming up here in whatever it is, a half hour or so. 50 minutes. And the phone lines are open, folks. 888-997-4539.
Oh, there you go. You spoke, and here comes a phone call. I'm guessing. I'm seeing the state, so I'm guessing this might be a Wildcat. I'm not sure. Hi, caller. You're on with Mark. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
Hey guys, it's the real MVP. How you doing?
There we go. The real. What's
Kentucky.
going on?
Got to represent the best state and the best basketball team in the SEC, Tim.
Absolutely.
So I just wanted to ask you all: do you think the 14-team playoff, the round, is just because of off-season talk, and there's not a whole lot to talk about, or do you think this is really going to get past this off-season?
If I were to guess, I'm not saying it's a guarantee, not saying it's a prediction of mine, but since you were asking the question, most things, I want to know if anybody's got any examples there in the chat of when we've seen smoke that there's not been fire eventually. You know, just look at these teams that are joining the Big Ten here this fall. We heard about USC and UCLA a few weeks prior to. We heard about Oregon and Washington months and months, even to the point where it was like, no, the Big Ten doesn't want them. The Big Ten doesn't want them. They applied for membership a long time ago, last fall. Big Ten doesn't want, well, the Big Ten did. There just needed to be some things ironed out, like you're not getting a full share. That probably was one of them. And on and on and on. And the 12 team, we heard about it. They're in talks. What's it going to look like? What could it be? Okay, boom, we got the 12 team. So, yeah, I think the 14 team is, I think the Big Ten and the SEC is holding that over the other two conferences because of, going to go back to the well. My initial reaction to that was there's two big reasons here. One is that they're 80% probable of being the two conferences that are going to get the 13th and 14th spots That's going to be a lot of Tennessee and Penn State and Washington in the future kind of teams getting those spots. But more than that, it's more important that they kick out the other teams from getting buys at their conferences and just say, we're running this thing, so we're going to get the buys.
Talk about more adding. So hold on, let's think. Do you think that the TV networks want more teams and more games and more revenue? Because we just got to follow the money. What's going to get more money? And that's exactly what the CFP is going to do. They're on their way to 16 teams, you guys. This isn't stopping at 12 or 14. This is going to go all the way to 16. And then they'll say, well, we don't want buys, so we need 16 teams.
And you're probably right, Tim, with the 16, because it makes sense. Anybody who can do math, even if you can't do math, if you've been watching sports long enough, 64 works, 32 works, 16 works. That's why you do those numbers, because it works for a tournament bracket. So why don't you have 16? Why are we talking about 14? And this is the only thing, Tim, that I think might hang it up at 14 is because the control that the Big Ten and the SEC want to say our two best teams are going to own those buys.
Fair.
Otherwise, I do think, 16, it makes sense. Plus, it's more money. So, and people are more comfortable with it. 16, yeah.
At the end of the day, it's going to be all about that more money. Now, it would be nice because then you can, I guess, almost give the mirage that the regular season hasn't been just eradicated over the past 10 years in front of us. Because that's really what's happened. The regular season used to mean something. That was again, we talk about all the differences in college football and the NFL. What makes college football, even though it's a lesser quality of football, right? You don't have the top football players in the country. That would be the NFL. But the things like a regionality, that's out the window. And now the regular season, right? It used to be you lose, you're out. Oh, you don't win your conference, you're out. Those things are totally off the table now. You don't. Even before, even the 14 playoff, you didn't even need to win your own conference in order to get to the playoffs. So it's completely made the regular season, just like college basketball, just like the NFL for a big part of it, that it's not as important. Those losses aren't as important as they used to be.
Yeah, Tim, I completely and largely agree with it, except I get a little more extreme than you. I think it's very likely we'll see 5 SC or Big Ten teams represented in a 14 or 12 team playoff at some point. I understand it. Everything has to work out, but you just play the math year over year. I mean, look at the odds this year. The SEC is expected to win basically every major non-conference matchup. If they do win it, like Texas supposed to beat Michigan. Texas A&M's supposed to beat Notre Dame. And if they win all of these non-conference matchups, and you get an SEC team at 11-1, another one at 11-1, one at 2, and you got 3 at 9-3, I think 1 or 2 of those should get in 10-3. So I think the Big Ten can have the same thing happen to them if they dominate on conference schedule and they have a few teams at 9-3. Those teams should get in.
And it will most likely happen. Look at how many teams in both the conferences you name generally have teams that finish in the top. Well, so they finish the top 14, right? Because you're going to have that extra one that's going to go off to the group of 5. But then the rest, you're right. I think those other 13 are going to go. Wait, sorry, not 13, because you have the Big 12. So that's 4. So it's 5. So 9. So there's 9 teams basically, right? We're looking at, because that the way they have it set up, you have 2 for the SEC. That's 2 for the ACC, 2 for the Big 12, and then 1 for the at-large. That's 3 right there. Correct? It's 5. 5 right there.
Correct.
So then it leaves 9 teams. So that means the Big Ten's probably going to get the Big Ten's going to get 5, and the SEC will get 4. And so we're complaining about these extra seeds and stuff like that. But in reality, as time goes by, I don't mean right away, right? Because some of these ACC teams, and possibly Big 12 teams can make a decent run. You could have a Florida State, a Miami, Clemson, put together a good season, and a couple of their teams get in that are going to make waves in the playoffs. But in general, if you look at the best teams in the country, as time goes by, as the money disparity, because we're talking about now, they're talking about equal revenues for the power conferences, and it's gonna be the power two. So now the playoff money is gonna go disproportionately to the haves, right? Because they already have, the SEC and the Big Ten already have the big television contracts. They already have the biggest stadiums. They already have the biggest revenue between the two conferences. That number is going to continue to grow. And so what happens to this sport when you have the haves and haves not? Let's say this thing lasts 10 years the way we have it. What is the ACC and SEC going to look like once the ACC starts losing teams, which is going to happen as soon as Florida State can get out of there, right? Then you're going to have this footprint shrink even more. And we talked about it a while ago on this channel. What happens when these other conferences are unable to compete, like literally unable to compete because they just don't have the money or the firepower to do that? Are their fans going to continue to watch? Probably not. And then can college football sustain only having two conferences?
I think college football can be sustained with only two conferences, but I think we're on the same page when it comes to this, that there are going to be so many portions of fans across the country that are going to be alienated that it's going to be much more of a regional sport, unfortunately.
And by regional, it'll be the Midwest and the South.
Yeah. And a little bit on the West Coast.
Right. I'm curious. Tony Altimore, I know, does charts for when the Northeast lost popularity. I wonder if he could sometime come on here and explain in depth of what was that decline like. Was it a gradual decline? Was it a precipitous decline? I'm just curious about that because I think we could see that happen to the West and the Big 12 country.
Yeah, and that's what I think is going to happen. I think you're going to see fans go to other sports, be it NFL or to back to baseball, right? Everyone's locked out of that. But if you're a member, if you're a fan of, let's say, a Boise State, and now you've been a diehard fan, and you love watching Boise State, you love watching bowl games. You remember when Boise State was in the Fiesta Bowl, so you watch the Fiesta Bowl. You're doing all these things that fans do. They don't just watch Boise State play. They watch the other teams in college football. But if your team has been relegated to a level of football that you're never going to even sniff a national championship, let alone, and now that bowl games, right? Now they've made it even more so. Imagine when we go to this 14-team playoff, that's going to further make bowls, even the New York Six bowls, pale. I mean, are they going to start incorporating those into the playoff? What's going to happen to that? So now your team can't even make it to a major bowl game, even if you have a Cinderella season. What's that going to do to these fan bases and where are they to go? Because I would have to tell you, I think human nature, they're not going to remain college football fans. And they're certainly not going to be, they're probably definitely not going to watch the conferences that ruined their programs. I mean, there's going to be a lot of animosity towards the Big Ten and SEC for what's going to happen. There has to be a backlash. I know if USC had to stay in the Pac-12 and then Pac-12 football just fizzled away, and then USC football became completely irrelevant because big money TV decided that West Coast football wasn't going to continue. I'm not going to. I stopped being a Rams and Raider fan the second they left LA. You know what I mean? It's like, if I don't have a team to root for that has my interest, why am I going to follow that? And so I haven't been an NFL fan like I was when I was a kid since then.
Okay, I want to shift to a different subject, Mark. Did you watch or hear any of the Ocho with John and them?
I did not.
Oh, well, you should go back and rewatch and enjoy the complete maize and gold box that was on display, Mark. I mean, J.J. McCarthy's going to be one of the two quarterbacks drafted. He's got Patrick Mahomes' qualities in him. J.J. McCarthy, I guess, is going to enter the league and score 40 touchdowns, 3 picks, and win MVP, Mark. I mean,
is that why
JJ's a good quarterback?
Is that why Harbaugh would run the ball every chance he got because he had the next Patrick Mahomes behind center?
I guess. I don't know. Apparently he should win the league MVP this first year. Otherwise, he's a bust. Mark, what do you think about all this hype behind J.J. McCarthy?
Well, like a lot of things, DeReal, I find myself running into people that are way, 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 way off a cliff on one end of the spectrum. And this is just another topic where last night we had our guy, David Greenshield, who called in and he was talking about J.J. McCarthy in light of Craig Krenzel. So he's on the other end of the spectrum, and I had to pull him back off that ledge, or attempted to. I don't think I was successful to explain why J.J. McCarthy has the potential to be a really good NFL quarterback. To your point, let's not go crazy about J.J. McCarthy being anything extra special, because he most likely won't be in the NFL. Can he be a capable, good quarterback? That would be my best estimation, is that he's going to be a top 12 or 15 quarterback in the NFL. I don't have a comp for you right this second off the top of my head in terms of playing style. Maybe in terms of performance ability, maybe he's going to be, and again, folks, I'm not talking about a stylistic comparison. Maybe he's going to be Kirk Cousins, which there's nothing wrong with that. He makes all sorts of money and has signed some enormous contracts and amassed a lot of stats. J.J. McCarthy is the most difficult of these top-level quarterbacks to evaluate because he did not throw consistently. Of course, he had to throw high-leverage passes in championship games. He did it against Ohio State, against Washington, against Bama. He did it, but he didn't have to go throw 45 passes and go out and win a game and have the offense on his back. He had a lot of support, and he was within a system where he's shown the ability to make all the throws, but he didn't ever have to carry the offense. That was never his play. Caleb Williams, Tim could explain it much better than you. We could point to a ton of Caleb Williams tape in games. The one I will point to, if somebody said, I want to see Caleb Williams at his best, or I want to see just where it's a high leverage game and he really came through. The night that he sold me was at the Coliseum a year ago, 2022, against Notre Dame, because Notre Dame had a really good defense. And Caleb Williams played one of the best games that I've seen a quarterback play since I've watched college football. So Caleb Williams' ceiling is way higher than J.J. McCarthy's. Jaden Daniels, well, he's on another plane as a runner. He's been an inconsistent thrower prior to his Heisman season. He put it all together in the Heisman season, but prior to that, Jaden Daniels was pretty much, he's got the arm talent. They all have the arm talent to play in the league at a high level. You know, how many quarterbacks do we watch in the NFL that are highly successful quarterbacks that were being questioned in the draft process because they just had a little hitch here, or they didn't do this quite right, or they didn't make that kind of throw that well? These guys all get picked apart during the draft process to the nth degree. But my best guess is that J.J. McCarthy is going to be a decent starting quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. To me, he's probably going to be like a Derek Carr type player. Kirk Cousins is a good one. I don't think he's ever going to win the Super Bowl because of him, or he's not going to be the top 5 quarterbacks, but is he going to be a complete bust? I doubt it. He's just an average NFL quarterback. There's nothing wrong with being average, especially in the NFL quarterback. Is he going to be a CJ Stroud or a Caleb Williams? I doubt it. But people just take things way too. I just don't like the binary of the situation, Mark. Either you're great or you're terrible. There's no room in the middle for nuance or availability. I mean, Mark, did you see that J.J. McCarthy scored the best score in the combine? That means he's great, I guess. Or he went 27-1 as a college quarterback starter, which I guess is going to translate to the NFL. I mean, people just cherry pick stats in order to boost up their gut, Mark, but it's crazy.
There is also no room for anyone to look at their rival or their rival's players. And when I say no room, that doesn't mean that there aren't reasonable fans out there and we hear from them. But I mean, by and large, maybe it's because of the amount of Michigan and Ohio State talk that we have on here that's thrust upon me. I don't generate it for the most part. I do to a certain extent, but it's in response to what people want. I would like to have a little bit more balanced content here, but I think the nature of the way this series has gone the last 3 years has awakened the Michigan fan base, and therefore the amount of just extreme, ridiculous bias on both sides is tenfold what it was a few years ago.
Yeah. We got a guest backstage. Sonny's backstage. Been away a little while. And then Darrell, and I've got to get out of here. So guess what, Darrell? I got to drop you as well.
What?
Thanks, Darrell. Appreciate you being here, man.
See you, Tim. Good talking to you, Mark.
All right. Thanks.
All right, Tim. Thank you so much. We are going to catch up with Tim and with Matt over on the USC channel. It's a call-in show. So give those guys a call. Or if you just want to learn about USC football and hear some great talk about the Big Ten, USC, and college football, check out Tim and Matt. It's coming up in 1/2 hour, folks, over on the USC channel.
And I've decided, I'm just going to steal the Mount Rushmore stuff. It's been such a slow week. We're going to talk defensive line, but people are tired of hearing what might be on a defensive line. It's going to be a different new scheme with new players, new coaches, new position coaches. It's almost to the point of why we speculated. So we're going to change pace, have fun in the show tonight. Do a Mount Rushmore. I think I'm going to split up in 4 though. I'm going to have it. I think we're going to do pre 2000 and then probably post 2000 for the Mount Rushmore.
Okay.
So that's what we're going to do. So if you guys want to join us, as always, you're all welcome. Thank you for being here. And I'll see all you guys next week.
Thanks, Tim.
Or later.
Let's bring in our guy, Sonny Verma, coming in from the Illini Cast and also the Big Ten Show. They're both right here on YouTube, folks. Sonny, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing fantastic, Mark. Thanks for having me on today.
Absolutely. Good to see you. Good to have you here.
We're not talking about fun topics for an Illinois fan, though.
Well, I'm going to leave it wide open to you whether you want to grind down on the Illini. We can go with your specific team and catch up with Brett Bielema and the guys, or wherever you want to take this in regards to the Big Ten.
I was just thinking, we always, as you just kind of mentioned, we tend to get a viewpoint of Ohio State fans, Nebraska fans, USC fans now moving forward. And the one thing that you guys all know, that even in the changing landscape of college football, is that no matter what happens, you guys are going to be involved. You guys are at the forefront of the sport, whether you call it the blue bloods or whatever term you use for it. I'm curious, to get your opinion now a little bit on, the viewpoints of a school that I went to, Illinois, and where we move forward. So I have a question for you. Humor me for a second. Say you are a fan of the University of Illinois football and you've been watching it for the better part of your life. Would you rather have been a fan in the, let's just say, 80s, 90s? Or would you rather be a fan starting 2024 moving forward. And let me just give you like a quick argument on each side. 2024, we're still involved. We're in the Big Ten. We're going to be making a lot of money through that media deal. So much money that we have, powerhouses, traditional powerhouses and other conferences who will be making more money, and them essentially trying to get out of their conferences and join us. Obviously, the benefits of the 80s, 90s is, I think the outlook was different. I hate to phrase it this way because I'm not trying to sound old timey, but as an Illinois fan, it was more along the lines of, if you finished 8-4, you were successful, you beat your rivals, and that itself, you were very happy with the end of the season. That's all it took. There was you weren't, I watched hockey, and I watch it, I think the Blackhawks are going to win the Stanley Cup someday in my life. I watched basketball. I think the Bulls are going to win the championship against, at least some point in my life. And that goes for all the sports. But I've never really had an inclination or thought that Illinois football was going to win a national championship ever. Like, there was a beauty to college football for me. Again, rooting for, dare I say, a middle tier university, that it was more about the purity of the regular season and just the rivalries and the regional aspect of it. So let me, just kind of, after having given you both sides, I'm curious to your thoughts, where you kind of side on the future or the past.
So it took me a millisecond to answer your question in my head. I answered it before you even finished the question. But before I take off on that, I will say that when we have a fan of a school that basically has no chance to win a national championship, we just had Michael Hogue, guy that calls all the time. Love Michael, Purdue fan. Loves
he comes in on my show every now and then too.
Yes. The real MVPs, Kentucky fan.
Mm-hmm.
You yourself, Illinois fan. Other people that call us on a regular basis. We used to have a Wake Forest guy that used to call us all the time. I love hearing that there are people out there that are just as obsessed with this sport, love their team just as much as the Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, Alabama fans. And I root for them. I want them to succeed. I would love to see them taste something close to a national championship. I would love for them to win a national championship. That doesn't seem possible. So whatever gets you close to that. Kansas State won the Big 12 2 years ago. They've won Big 12 championships in the past. That's kind of they've touched that New Year's Six level a number of times. I think that's a good example of a school that we may agree can't win a national championship, but they get in that elite level at times and participate. So I would love to have a sport where, so for example, I was an avid, ardent Cleveland Indians fan my whole life. I don't know if there's a team that I have loved more than the Cleveland Indians. And I was the guy that was watching the last week of the season when they were 35 games out of first place and had 100 losses. And I'm still watching the games, still paying attention to everything. I almost gravitate to being a more adamant of a fan when my teams are bad than when they're good. That's kind of strange. Maybe it's a badge of honor or something. So my college football situation is so much different than that. So I can't relate to being a Purdue fan because I couldn't imagine, okay, we're starting the season. Great. We're starting the season, but if we go 8-4, I'm going to be really happy. Like, I don't know. I don't know when the last time Ohio State stepped on the field and I thought they were going to lose.
Yeah.
I don't know, probably 15 years ago or more. I don't know when the last time I really thought, okay, they're probably going to lose today. Like, I never think that. but I've experienced that in another sport, so I guess I could be just as happy in that. Now, having experienced what I've experienced my whole life, I don't know if if Ohio State suddenly became Purdue, I don't know if I could be as big a fan. So to get to your question, yes. When did you start watching college football?
College football, the year the Washington Huskies won their national championship. I think it was like
1991.
91, right? Yeah, 91. Yeah.
All right. So that was right at the cusp of what you're talking about, right at the end of Illinois having a good 10 or 12 year run. They went to the Rose Bowl in 83. They had some really good teams, 84, 85 range. Then later in the decade, Jeff George. Yeah, they had some really good teams. They never competed for a national championship, but hey, if you review, well, they beat Ohio State 5 years in a row.
Yeah.
And yeah, I just was like, yeah, that I thought that was unthinkable because it just was. But they did. And actually, if things would have broken differently in 1983, they were a 10-1 football team that went to the Rose Bowl. And had they won the Rose Bowl, they would have had they weren't going to be voted the national champion, but they would have had a legitimate claim. So to me, it's difficult for me to describe how I viewed national championships and the culmination of the season differently then versus now, because the playoff has just so much taken over everything. Right. But people still wanted their teams to win the national championship. But I guess there's something different about watching a national championship game, watching your team compete in the playoff to win the national title versus saying, oh, we won the Orange Bowl on New Year's Day and we're 11-1 and somebody else are 11-1 that won the Rose Bowl and the Sugar Bowl. Hopefully we get voted number one in the morning. Oh, open the paper the next morning. We're number one. We won the national championship. And that's what it was. You would actually have to wait for the newspaper on January 2nd to see officially. They usually had a pretty good idea, but who won the national championship? It's crazy. So I would want to be an Illinois fan circa 1980 to early 90s, 94 range. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And, just kind of using your reference point, like what you just talked about. Like it was very important for, let's just say, the top two teams, right? The top three teams to find out in the newspaper who finishes first. But you're also talking about, that means like 100 plus other teams who didn't have to live that part down. They could have just enjoyed the season for what it was. Again, it's like, you win your first three games, you lose your next two. And again, I'm not talking about one of the juggernauts. I'm just talking about like, the Kansas States, the Purdue's, the Illinois. In moving forward, and you've talked about this plenty of times in your show, like the bowl games for the most part are irrelevant now. Like even that's not, even as little as 5, 6, 7 years ago, it was at least a cool thing to win the bowl game that you're going to be participating in. Now, a lot of the players aren't playing and they're just kind of a placeholder to the point. I don't know how much longer they're going to be around if we just keep expanding the playoffs. Because at that point, what purpose are they serving now? Like we need the extra weeks in order to include the playoffs. So, I'm curious, and I had this conversation with a friend of mine the other day. I'm curious to see, my son is 3 years old, what college football is going to be like when he's in his mid-20s, when he's in his 30s. Because I think you kind of alluded to it. I can absolutely see, not only, Big Ten SEC can break off like within a matter of 5, 6 years or whenever this media deal is over. But I can also see at some point where the SEC, like it's basically a combination and it becomes a super league of some sorts. And those, Basketball, unfortunately, for a school like mine, it isn't nearly as important. So the guys who are kind of dead weight in football kind of are left behind. And then you can see like 80 teams, 90 programs around the country, kind of like, okay, what are we doing? Like, we're not one of the 20 elite ones. But then you kind of have the return of those regional conferences. Then all of a sudden, Illinois, Purdue, Indiana, maybe Iowa State, schools like that, all of a sudden do formulate their own conference. And yeah, I don't know where the money's going to go, because I really think college football right now is moving way too fast in one direction, that they're not thinking 3, 4, 5 steps ahead. I do think that there's a chance for viability. I'm talking like 20, 25 years from now, where, yeah, you'll have the juggernaut league, the Premier League, the Super League, where you have the 20 best programs. But I think there's going to be real value, monetary value in, let's just say, like, the Iowa fans are super passionate, right? Iowa, like, you log on to YouTube, there's a half a dozen shows just on Iowa football. Let's say they don't clear the top 20. That doesn't mean Iowa football is going to die necessarily. Or is it? I guess it's more of a hypothetical question. But to be able to kind of focus their energy, Iowa, playing, I'm trying to think of an equivalent type of school, like, to rejuvenate those type of rivalries and it become regional again. Because then you'll have 1 or 2 conferences out in the West. Basically, football almost returning to what it looked like in the early 90s, minus the absolute, top tier juggernaut programs.
So my first thought concerning what you said about the bowl games and how long they're going to exist, I might be wrong. I don't think they're going to go away. The reason they exist is because they make money. And when they cease making money, they will cease to exist. So as long as they make money, and why do they make money? They don't make money because players don't opt out. They don't make money. We could make all sorts of comparisons between what bowl games are now versus what they were 30 years ago. They make money because enough people watch them on TV, and so they make money. So as long as that continues, even though college football fans are going to complain about who's opting out and which 6-6 teams playing another 6-6 team in a bowl game, my guess would be they will continue to select teams to play in bowl games as long as they can put it on TV. And we did a TV rating series, and we see that Rutgers and Miami draws over 3 million viewers to the Pinstripe Bowl, and it makes money.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my thought on that. In terms of the SEC and the Big Ten breaking off and what these other schools will do and what they will look like, you kind of, in an underhanded kind of way, brought up an interesting point that doesn't get talked about too much. And that's, well, regardless of how mediocre, I think that's a good word for it, Purdue, Illinois, Indiana are, they're in a great place. They play in the Big Ten. They're included. Now, this may not bode well for their competitive nature going forward. Their records may not look good. But if the administration and the athletic department's goals are, let's make a lot of money, fill our stadium, be on TV, be connected to this playoff, even though we're never going to go to it, but be connected to this playoff, and we'll make all this money for the school, and it helps enrollment. And let's not get embarrassed. We don't want to go 3-9. It'd be good to go 7-5, 6-6. So let's be competitive to a certain extent. Let's hope that's a outcome of most of our seasons, and we're good with that. That's who we are, and we're going to be okay with that. Well, then they've reached their goals. Their goals are about making money and having the university be on TV on NBC, CBS, and Fox every week somewhere to be promoted. And they'll be just fine with that. what's interesting is that at what point, we see the SEC and the Big Ten playing hardball with the ACC and the Big 12 to say, our brands make more money in this playoff, so we're going to get a larger cut. Why wouldn't, and you may have heard me say this earlier, why wouldn't, and especially if there's going to be salaries paid to these players and the demands on each program is going to be the same to pay the salaries and do all that, why wouldn't the elite programs that are bringing in the numbers for the conferences say, no, we want the share that represents how much we bring to the conference in terms of TV ratings? And then I can't imagine this happening, and I don't want it to happen. I would hate this, but we have already seen crazy things happen that we didn't anticipate 20 years ago, 10 years ago. Would the Big Ten say, Rutgers, Illinois, pick your schools, whoever they are,
Sure.
whether they're the worst 2 or the worst 6, and you're not bringing enough value to our conference, bye.
I almost wonder if it wouldn't necessarily be a Big Ten thing. It would be more of a, just because there's rules and written bylaws and whatnot. I think it would simply be one of those Ohio State, Georgia, Alabama, these type of schools decide they are leaving the Big Ten in order to form their own, super conference, whatever you might call it. And it's a trying time to be, someone in my place, to follow a team as close as I do, but I try to expand my horizons a little bit too, just because it's a different level of competition, I guess. But I was definitely very curious on your thoughts. But what's funny is that we're talking about how mediocre the Illinois I guess history is with football. Not to change the topic, but to kind of change the topic, I think we can compete with anybody when it comes to the Mount Rushmore.
Oh, you probably can. And before we get to that, let me just say one other thing about our previous topic.
Sure.
Let's say, and I don't want it to go there, it doesn't look like it's going quite to this extreme, but then again, nothing's off the table at this point. Let's say we do get to a point where there's an elite conference of, let's say, 24 teams. It's the version of the NFL. Well, whoever those bottom schools of those 24, Washington, Iowa, I don't know who they would be. Well, I could guess, but somebody always has to lose the games.
Right.
So you may be the new version or the elite conference version of Indiana and Vanderbilt and Wake Forest. Do you really want that? Somebody's got to lose the games.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, I don't know. I'm curious. It's just moving so fast.
And who are these SEC and Big Ten teams going to play in non-conference play?
Right.
So are they going to just play each other? And if they are, I think one of the reasons why these schools play cream puffs in non-conference play is to beef up their record so it looks good, and also to give their athletes a bit of a break.
Sure. Yeah.
So you're not playing a top 20 team every week. But if you're the Big Ten and the SEC and you break off from everyone, are you going to play that kind of schedule all the way through? And if you're not, are you going to use the group of 5 and the discarded Big 12 and ACC teams to fill up your schedule in the non-conference play? And if you do, and that's your attempt, and I'm the discarded Big 12 and ACC teams, I say, now I know this is easy for me to say. Right. They'll most likely get abused just to take the paycheck.
Right, exactly, the money.
But by principle, I would say, no, we're not playing you. We now have to play our own playoff or do whatever we're going to do. We're not playing you.
Yeah.
Can I take a shot at the Mount Rushmore?
Sure.
So I would think at Illinois, and I might really mess up here, so people be kind because this is off the top of my head. I would think that you would have Dick Butkus. You would have the Galloping Ghost, Red Grange. You would have I think you would have Simeon Rice on your Mount Rushmore.
He was my fourth one. Yep.
And even though he played with another all-time great defensive player at Illinois, I got to think I'm probably missing somebody else that's more of a legendary status. So I'm not going to say Kevin Hardy. I'm going to find I got to be missing somebody. Got to be missing somebody.
I can give you one hint if it's the one guy that I'm thinking of. He played with no, I don't think he played with the Packers in the NFL.
Oh, okay. He played with the Packers in the NFL. Huh. Maybe I'm not knowing that. I would.
I mean, it's arguable whether this guy's on this. I think he is.
Okay.
I never saw him play. Let's put it that way.
Okay, you didn't see him play. Did he play for the great Packer teams of the 60s, the Vince Lombardi teams? And he played at Illinois.
If I know my years right.
Maybe I'm.
Yes.
So I probably
drafted in 1958.
Drafted in 58. Well, it certainly wasn't Bart Starr because he went to Alabama, and Paul Hornung went to Notre Dame, and Jim Taylor went to LSU. Who was an Illinois product? Ray Nitschke didn't play it. Did he? He played at Illinois. Okay. There's my four then. All right.
Yeah. That was those are my four. You know, obviously
Ray Nitschke played at Illinois. All right.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, again, we don't have much to talk about now, but I'll take my Mount Rushmore. You know, there's only one other school I can think of, and you know, this can be quick. Let's just see if you can guess off the top of your head who have an elite, in my opinion, Mount Rushmore compared to what their historical performance on football is. Can you think of?
I would say probably either Purdue or Cal. Purdue, you could put in Drew Brees, Len Dawson, Bob Greasy. Who would I miss? Leroy Keys was a great player, but not at that level. I might be missing somebody with Purdue, but they had three. There's three Pro Football Hall of Fame quarterbacks. Cal's got Aaron Rodgers right out of the gate, and Deshaun Jackson, and who am I forgetting? Marshawn Lynch. Did I hit either school?
I think mine is a little higher. So let's just say, like, I know the show's about to end.
Stanford,
the University of Pittsburgh.
Oh, yeah. Oh, their Mount Rushmore's phenomenal.
Right. I mean, you're talking about the elite of the elite when it comes to that. But then you
Tony
think of
Dorsett, Dan Marino, Hugh Green, Mike Ditka. Oh, yes.
Yeah, that was the only other one I can think of, like, you know, has the same discrepancy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great one. That is a great one. Yeah, so I'm thinking about jumping on every channel, doing a live stream, bringing somebody with me, and
that's why I wanted to bring it up here, because I know you didn't have an Illinois channel, so I'm like, you know what, let's bring it up, because this is actually one of those topics that I can hold my head high for.
Well, I missed on Ray Nitschke. I didn't know that he played for Illinois. I got the other three, but yeah, Ray Nitschke, number 60. Good stuff. Sonny, appreciate you being here. Everybody check out the Illini cast. It's right here on YouTube. So if people type in Illini cast, they're going to find it right away, correct?
Yeah, it should be right there.
All right.
With the other project, Big Ten Show, which you mentioned earlier, that one you can't type Big Ten Show. For some reason, you have to use the @ and then Big Ten Show, and then that show will pop up. It's a show that I do with Justin Adams, your Nebraska correspondent, and we release about 1 or 2 episodes a week, and that's been growing super fast for us, and it's a project we're both very, very proud of.
Okay, I just posted the link in the chat. Now, it may not show up as a link, unfortunately, but if you can just copy that.
Yeah.
I've been having an issue with that for some reason, where everything I used to type would be a link automatically, but it's not showing up as a link. But that's the link that you just copy and paste there for the Big Ten show channel that's doing really good numbers, doing great. And again, it's Sonny, it's Justin, it's JR, and you see those guys pop up here at the Voice of College Football, and they will continue to do so here in a lot of ways that we will soon announce. So, Sonny, appreciate you being here. Good talking to you. And the Mount Rushmore conversation is fascinating and kind of takes me away from all this somewhat depressing conversation about money arguments and playoff models. I normally love that kind of stuff, like the playoff models and conference realignment, but I don't like what it's doing to the sport.
And imagine how I feel. So that's why, again, this Mount Rushmore was a pleasant conversation that I was looking forward to. But thanks for having me on, Mark. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Sonny. Have a good night.
You too.
All right, folks. Appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. Thank you for everyone who participated in the chat. I don't see any comments and questions, so we will bid adieu for another night here at the Voice of College Football. You will not see a lot from me over the next few days. A lot going on here. Good things, so not bad things. So you don't need to be concerned in any such way. Good things going on. And so excited over the next, let's say, month to really unveil a lot of new stuff here at the Voice of College Football. So hang in there. Hang with us. We're going to deliver. All right, folks, have a great weekend, and head on over to the USC channel. Yeah, they're taking calls right now. Jump in the chat. Let's just transfer you right over to the USC channel. I hope we've got that. Let me set you up for that one. I'm going to post it in the chat. Tim and Matt are there right now, always tearing it up. So again, the USC call-in show is going on right now. See you next time.